Start recording. Calling to order the October 29th meeting of the Quiet Zone Working Group. The first item on our agenda, I'm just going to mention in the room this evening, for members of the committee, we have me, Kate Fitzpatrick, and that's it. Online, we have Justin. So the three of us are the quorum for the meeting this evening. And then we do have town staff here with Karis and Tom and JP. At any rate, so the first order of business is the approval of our prior meeting minutes from March 20th and September 11th. If there are any changes or corrections? If they're all good, then I would put them on file. Okay, we have, our two people who are here this evening to speak with us. And is there a particular order that was determined?
GPI is first.
GPI is first. So then I think we're ready to have
And I think they're
GPI
online, is that right?
join us. GPI is online.
Yep. John
Starts with
Diaz.
John Diaz, and he'll let you know who else.
Yeah.
Is there a vendor outside? We got them listening to our conversation.
They're on the bench. They're on the corner. I mean, it's a, what's in them, so
Yeah,
different.
okay.
Hello.
Hi there, John. How are you?
Good. It's been a while.
You know, we keep moving along though.
Oh, that's
So-
good. That's good. If you can have the ability for basically all the folks at Jacobs to participate, I think they all have something to say at some point. So if that's whoever was on the invite list that Miles that I sent you.
No,
So
no.
Miles, are you able to bring over all those folks?
I'm bringing them over right now, I'm sure.
Great, thank you.
Just confirming the names.
And you've allocated 20 minutes, did you say, for the presentation? Yes, 20 minutes for presentation and 10 minutes. Question and transition.
It should be everyone but Keith.
All right,
Okay.
John, we think we're ready, so we can turn it to you to start.
All right. Do I have ability to share my screen, Miles? I don't see it.
You should hear now.
Okay. Right, let me know. Let me know. You guys see that?
We can see it.
All right, well, thanks again so much for having us in tonight to talk about this. For this project, we brought Jacobs in, Jacobs Engineering, for their railroad design experience. They've done most of the folks actually all the folks that are on that team are either previous MBTA or Keolis engineers and technicians. They have a ton of experience in rail design, rail signalization. So basically the way the team would work is I'd be your overall project manager, point of contact. We did the risk assessment as part of the feasibility study. We'd be updating those as necessary for the design. We'll do any of the civil design related to the crossings, to the at-grade crossings, and if we need any supplemental ground survey, we would be doing that. Jacobs will do all the railroad design, the H plans, lead the diagnostic testing, the track signalizations, the railroad control plans, dealing with our friends at Keolis and MBTA, and as well as the QA/QC of the project. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I gave you my resume. You guys know me. I've been around for a long time. So I'm going to turn it over to the folks at Jacobs. Jack is going to start off. This is really their project for the most part. This is what they do. So I'm just going to turn it over to those guys right now and let them run with it.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. My name is Jack O'Neill. we want to thank you for shortlisting us and allowing us to present to you. We're really excited about this project and we have the team that is ready to start immediately. I will be the Jacobs principal for this project and will commit to you that you will receive all of the Jacobs resources to make this contract a very successful project. Our team presenters today will be shown on the slides and you'll hear from us.
Jack, just give me I'm running this show, so just give me a nod when you want me to move the
Okay,
slide.
yep, I shall. You'll hear from our technical engineers with years of experience in their fields that will drive this project to success. As you can see, we've included many individuals on our team that are leaders in the industry in their respective fields and all have worked on Keolis and MBTA projects. You will benefit from this by having a team that already has a great relationship with the Keolis and the MBTA and have dealt with the key people at both agencies for their entire careers. And they'll help you start this project immediately with no learning curve. We're able to contact the decision makers at both Keolis and MBTA immediately, and they'll take our calls and they'll help guide you through the murky waters of Keolis and MBTA to get you the answers that you'll need. I'm going to pass it over to Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney's rail track manager, and he'll give us a brief introduction as well.
Thank you, Jack. Next slide, John, please. Next one. Next. 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 Some good information that you can get into later, folks. Good evening. As Jack said, Mickey Rooney, it came up as Charles Rooney, but everybody knows me. Mickey, I am the New England Rail Group systems lead. So I lead a group of folks out of the Boston area. Next slide, John, please. Yeah. So in our group, we have rail expertise, traction power, and a pile of signals folks. There's a few here on our call that I'm going to go through them quickly, and then we can get into the technical presentation. Next, John. We have Dan Shea. Dan has over 50 years of railroad experience. He's worked at the MBTA, commuter rail lines, through the consulting, has many connections and relationships. Next. John Mitchell, another 50-year veteran. John has worked at the MBTA and commuter rail lines, MBCR, and Keolis, now obviously with the consulting world. Worked on things like the quiet zone for the Greenbush line. Next. Derek, another 50-year. Derek started his career out in Ireland and came to the United States. He's worked as a railroad engineer the full time. Also had involvement with the quiet zone work down at the Greenbush line. And next. And our youngster, Jeremy, with only 30 years experience here, is our technical lead on this. And I'm going to pass it over to Jeremy he'll go over a little bit of our technical approach on this. Jeremy?
Thank you very much, Mickey. You can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to give you a brief description of our project approach, and it begins with the diagnostic team. This is going to be a team of engineers from both Jacob and GPI. It'll include your town engineers, the public safety department, including law enforcement and the fire department, and of course, Keolis, the MBTA, and the FRA. This team is going to be tasked with performing a diagnostic review, which is going to be to evaluate the existing conditions at each of the grade crossings. We're going to be looking at the current highway traffic volumes, pedestrian traffic, the speed limits, train speeds, if there's any school bus or transit bus routes going through these crossings, traffic signals nearby, which could possibly include preemption. We're also going to look at the track structure of the crossing, including the alignment, super elevation. We'll be looking at line of sight for both the vehicles and the trains approaching the crossing. We're going to look at the crossing surface and, of course, the existing warning equipment. Can I go to the next slide? So next, we're going to take all that, evaluate, and determine what supplemental safety measures and alternative safety measures would be required for that crossing. That could include medians, channelized devices, one-way streets, 4-quadrant gates, a vehicle detection system, and even possibly temporary or permanent crossing closures. All of this is going to be used to determine the best design alternative to meet the lowest risk threshold. After that, we're going to develop a conceptual design for each crossing. We'll work with Keolis and the MBTA, and with their review and approval, we'll move over to our final design plans and specs, so you folks can send this out for bid. We'll continue our support through bid phase services, construction phase services, and of course, the most important, the quiet zone application to the FRA. Thank you guys very much for hearing us, and I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
So we're working with a relatively tight timeline in order to try to look for funding if we want funding this, this town meeting in May. How would you be able to get us good, construction cost estimates, as part of this process?
The big key thing is going to be getting this diagnostic review started as soon as we can. We have our team has excellent connections with both Keolis and the MBTA, and we'd be able to hit the ground running once we got if we got your approval on this. So that would be that would be our key.
Yeah, Karis, one of the things that impressed me the most when I started to talk to these guys was, you know, I was describing our experience with meeting with Keolis and the folks from MBTA out at the golf course, and you know, these guys knew every one of those people. I think hired half of those people at those organizations. So the nice part is when they make the call, you know, they're responsive and they respond to them. So, you know, this was kind of the timeline. I think we're in good shape for the diagnostic testing. You know, the first phase will be developing these H plans and the civil plans, which, you know, we have them here from what we did previously. We have a good idea of what we want to do out there at the various crossings. You know, once we have that diagnostics with Keolis and MBTA and really know what's out there and what's involved in all each individual crossing, then we may have to make some revisions to the recommendations or the risk, the SMS that we're choosing. But we would expect that, you know, we'll have that initial meeting with Keolis right away, and probably have the actual field diagnostic testing somewhere in December. I know you have town meeting in May, and that's where you're looking, you know, you really want to have those numbers like in the March, April area. So it's, you know, probably if things go smoothly, we can probably advertise earlier. I think the advertising might be a little later than, it wasn't quite clear in the proposal whether you were looking for advertising in May or advertising in August, but in terms of having a number for a town meeting, we should really be in good shape for that.
The other question is, have you ever done successfully a quiet zone in this area? And I guess my question would be either on when they were, you know, for the members of the firm, either on when you were working for the MBTA or on this side, and kind of what has your experience been working on quiet zone specifically with the MBTA?
So the most recent one that myself, John, and Derek participated in was in Northern Indiana, and we did that last year. It was a commuter rail line that it was an existing railroad line that had been abandoned for 20 years, and they revamped it and brought it back into their commuter rail system. But John and Derek can speak on their experiences with Keolis. Derek, if you want to go over your. Oh, is Derek?
He's there.
Oh, how
Oh,
about
there
that?
you go.
Hey, yeah, we
Hey.
hear you.
Okay, so when the Green Bush was the last portion of the old colony project, it had been held back for various reasons. So when they decided to build a Green Bush, every single town wanted 4 quad gates. And every single town wanted a whistle band and 4 quad gates. 4 quad gates are not a fit for everything. So out of 27 crossings, even though we did get the quiet zone with various different means, but we only ended up with 5 crossings out of 27 that were 4 quad gates for various engineering reasons, alignment, driveways, line of sight, et cetera. Oh, and warning time too. You need a lot more warning time for 4 quad crossing than you do a normal half quad crossing, 2 quad crossing. So when you explain to people their gates are going to be down forever because of the speed of the train and the distance and the station stop, the medians were a better fit.
But to be clear, that it was a successful quiet zone through all those towns.
Yep, the whole of Greenbush is quiet zone, yes.
So John, this is Kate. I'm wondering if the team from Jacobs had any comments or things you would change about the recommendations that we've started looking at from the initial study.
We went through those. I think in general, they're in agreement. You know, one of the topics, as you know, Kate, that came up was the whole May Street and Great Plain. And the whole issue of how long the gates would stay down. I know when we were preparing for this, we had some talks about, you know, that one in particular is probably the biggest kind of, we have to really look into how that would work and if it's and what's possible, because, you know, having the gates down at May Street and Great Plain at the same time for an extended period could be, you know, a public safety issue. One of the things that they came up with, which we hadn't even talked about during the feasibility, was, you know, could we make that portion of May Street possibly one way, which we hadn't talked about. So there may be some additional things that we have to look at. It's really going to depend on, you know, what comes out of the diagnostic testing with Keolis in terms of what level of work has to be done on the track, and then especially for those 2 crossings, like how does that system really work with the current way? Is there any way to maintain something similar, but still be providing the constant warning time and the safety aspects that MBTA and Keolis is going to require? So.
Do you have experience working with federal or state grant opportunities for implementing quiet zone or other rail that you'd be able to potentially assist the town with?
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're a large firm. We have over 300 people in Boston, and we also have about 50,000 worldwide. We actually have a group of individuals down in our Arlington, Virginia office who actually work with the T to secure funding, federal funding. So it's a guy named Russell Koff leads this group. Very successful. The T constantly asks for him to do more work. He is very good at writing federal grants, getting money for the T for a number of the different projects. So we do have that ability if you wanted us to turn to him to see if he could help you guys.
Do you have any particular expertise with respect to private grade crossings? Have you ever worked with those in some capacity?
You're talking about the golf course, the infamous golf course.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you've ever done anything like that. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you want to talk
certainly,
about Mass Coastal stuff?
yes, I mean, we've certainly, for Mass Coastal, down Cape Main lines and Middleborough line, there's quite a few private crossings on there. We haven't been included in any quiet zones. Those crossings down there, none of them have none of the towns have asked for any quiet zones, but we've certainly worked with different towns and municipalities to install either passive devices or active devices for those crossings.
Are we still looking at alternatives for the golf course? Or are we just talking about
We
the
will be.
5? Yeah. Is that, do you anticipate to be part of,
Can you say it again, John?
you anticipate that to be part of this study, or would this work just be the 5 that we know we can do? Because I thought as part of the feasibility study, we had spent a lot of time going back and forth on
So the
whether the
funding-
FRA would even allow the quiet zone to start at a private crossing. So unless it's gonna somehow be private, that's the biggest thing. Because Jack, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, you can't start a quiet zone at a private crossing.
No, you can't.
So,
So the request that we made was to look at the public crossings as a design and cost estimating function. And there may be some additional work to do some more feasibility study work at the golf course.
okay.
Looking at the project that we have, do you have any phasing recommendations, or do you think it should be executed as all one project?
The 5 crossings should definitely be executed as all one project. Absolutely. It'll become because you have in that area, you have a lot of overlapping approaches. So to have multiple contractors in there would make it much more difficult than it really has to be. We'd want to have one contractor in there owning all 5 crossings.
What is your plan for keeping on task and deliveries and coordination with other projects? We have a downtown streetscape project that is gonna be starting up soon as well, so.
And a project on the Highland Ave corridor with the state.
Yeah, and a project from Webster Street all the way to downtown as well.
So we have, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, when we had done the feasibility study, we had identified that certainly some of those signals along Highland, particularly West Street, you know, that may have to be part of part designed to incorporate the railroad crossings for a preemption for the pre-signal or preemption at the railroad crossing. You know, the downtown project, we had come up with, I think there were 2 options we had. One showed gates, one showed some kind of median, whether it was raised or the flexible barriers. You know, I think if we can work closely with Tool on that project, particularly for that crossing, maybe even break that out as part of this project, because again, that's the one hiccup, that one area there, because of the May Street and Great Plain, how close they are. If we could eliminate the quad gates on Great Plain, that could help. And the only way we could do that is if we have some kind of physical median there. So, you know, in terms of working with the other projects, again, we're at this point, like we were at the feasibility study, we're kind of guessing at what needs to be done. We really need to get that diagnostic test done to really understand how this system is working, what has to be upgraded. But, you know, I don't think it should be anything that really changes any of those designs or delays any of those projects in any way. I think we can work with them. I mean, if we have to do a pre-signal and incorporate that into West Street, that's not a big deal, especially if we're already designing track circuitry out there. If they need additional time for the clearances or something, you know, we'd already be doing that. So in terms of the management, Jeremy, you're gonna, I think, jump in on that.
Yeah, I just want to say, Jacobs as a whole, we do a lot of work with the MBTA, we do a lot of work with Keolis, and working with both of those agencies, as you probably read in the paper, they have a lot of irons in the fire. There's a lot of projects going on. So whenever we do end up working on a project for them. We know we're always going to be having to coordinate with A, B, and C, other contractors, other contracts. So it's definitely something that we're very familiar with, and we expect it on quite a few of our projects with the MBTA.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Otherwise.
we're at time, John. Do you wanna, is there anything last words you wanna provide?
No, I do, again, just thanks for this. I know it's a big project for the town, and you've obviously got a lot of other things going on at the same time, so, would love to be part of this and help you out. Follow through with the feasibility study we started and stop the damn whistles in town, so.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
All
appreciate
right.
everybody
Guys,
coming
very
this
much.
afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Good evening.
I'm off to take the Needham Heights train to go home now.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Oh, and just Zach dropped off hard copies, so you have all our resumes there. Talking with Tom, I think that's as far as a formal proposal, is that sufficient, the copy of this presentation and the resumes? If you need something more formal, we can certainly supply that to you. But it was our understanding that was sufficient, so. Okay, all right,
Thank you.
thanks. Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You want to do mine? Okay.
For what?
He ran a marathon. It was in the military. Yeah.
Did they make you wear boots? when
Whenever he
you ran?
stands up, he goes.
Sitting down is worse.
Yeah, oh, wow.
Where would you like us?
Oh, good point. And we're all looking at the screen like you're gonna miraculously show up there.
We're here in the flesh.
Well, a
couple of them today.
Here, I'll go over here and you can have these two on this end, how about that?
And this third.
Okay.
You'll get a.
I can always switch over, yeah.
That would be mine. Yeah. Do you have a thumb drive or?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
How are you? How you doing?
Living the dream.
You be working at ski patrol this year?
I am. We had a pressure, not last weekend, the weekend before. Yeah. 25th year.
want to choose the next line?
Been doing it for a little while.
I'm pulling it up. We're on label Needham.
You know, I feel like if I don't do it, I'm gonna just lay in bed. It kind of forces me to go, you know?
One of my girlfriends started doing ski patrol last year. She loved
Where?
it. She does it in a show about it. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Not quite as intense.
I don't get me wrong, I mean, right now, I lift in the dark at 5:30 in the morning and blowing sideways at 5 degrees.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, not necessarily the most enjoyable, but. That purpose to keep moving, right?
And Justin, I'm gonna share this with you.
Do you need someone online? Somebody?
I'm sharing with Justin.
Right, but there's somebody in their participants.
Somebody
Oh, they got
was
a
up there earlier, but they may be
Kurt,
there
yeah.
now.
Yep. Kurt.
Yeah. So bring Kurt over.
Sorry, mouse is lagging.
And Tim Oster on the bottom. Tim Oster on the bottom. Everybody had one to you.
I promoted Justin by accident. Oh, Justin, never mind. Oops.
We're still missing one, right? Or there they come. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, okay.
All right, we're going to give you about 20 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Ish.
Sounds good.
right?
Okay. Sounds great.
So if you would all like to kick it off, that would be wonderful. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us. My name's Adam Yanulis at Ty and Bond. I'm a client service manager for Ty and Bond. I work out of our Westwood office, along with Dan, who works in our Westwood office, and Rich works in our Woburn office. But we're certainly pleased to be here. We've assembled a great team. Looking forward to the chance to talk to you about this project this evening. Rich Benevento is our principal in charge. And we'll guide you through the next phase of the process, and Dan Murphy, sitting next to me, will be part of that as well. And we'll introduce the rest of the team in a second. So with that, Rich?
Awesome. Next slide. So. There we go. So we have a brief agenda. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about the team, give you an idea of who we are, what we do, that sort of thing. I mean, many of you may be familiar with Ty and Bond, and some of you know that I'm at Ty and Bond. We were acquired. I was World Tech Engineering. We were acquired by Ty and Bond. We talk about community engagement with a project like this, always an important part of the project. We talk about our project understanding and our approach as we move forward with the project, and then challenges and opportunities as we go through this process, and then of course your important answers and questions. So again, you met Adam and I introduced myself and Rich Benevento. Interestingly enough, I wear a different hat. I am the chairman of the Parking and Traffic Commission for the city of Beverly. Beverly went through this quiet zone process. We have 25 crossings in Beverly, 19 are municipal crossings or publicly owned crossings, 6 are private crossings, and we have 5 quiet zones in Beverly. So it was about a 10-year process. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but certainly have gone through that process. Dan Murphy. Dan is a registered professional engineer, been involved with significant projects in the Commonwealth with Mass DOT, MBTA, other agencies. And Greg Lucas isn't with us tonight because he's presenting in Dedham, but he's our traffic lead, PTOE, professional traffic engineer. So really a well-rounded team. We've done a lot of work with Mass DOT, with the MBTA, collaboration on a lot of our projects. So with us is Banesh. We added them to the team. We have worked with Banesh actually on projects in Beverly at the Montserrat Station. They are a nationally known firm for this type of work. And I'm going to introduce Kurt Anderson and let him talk a little bit about Banesh and what they do. Kurt.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Benesh, and specifically our group, is grade crossing engineering experts doing work nationally in the grade crossing engineering field. We get involved in all kinds of grade crossing engineering, but specifically in this case, the quiet zone work. We've done quiet zone projects across the country. We've been doing them ever since the rule became in effect in 2006. So, we've literally done, hundreds of quiet zones, or been involved in different aspects of hundreds of quiet zones. So it's a significant amount. Because of our experience, we've been called upon by some of our railroad clients like Metro North Railroad, Long Island Railroad, Chicago Metra, South Shore Line in Chicago, Union Pacific and BNSF. We've done quiet zone work for them to make sure that the communities that are trying to implement quiet zones on their line are doing it in a manner that's compliant and safe. So, we've got that kind of experience that not a lot of teams have across the country. But we've also done a lot of municipal work, and I'll let Tim kind of talk about some of the municipal work we've done. Tim Oster is on our team, and he's our grade crossing quiet zone specialist. Tim? You're on mute, Tim.
Good to meet you. And yes, we've done a lot of work for cities. I worked for City of Fort Worth for many years. We had over 200 crossings in our city. We worked on multiple quiet zone projects throughout the city. Just finished a project in Michigan City, Indiana on a 40 crossing quiet zone double track for NICD in that area. We're working on a quiet zone for Columbia, South Carolina, for Huron, Ohio. We've got a couple quiet zones in the state of Washington that we're working on. So just to kind of give you a taste of the fact that we work across the country with multiple railroads, multiple agencies, and deal with multiple railroads.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
So community engagement will be a huge part of this. Obviously, we will take the town's lead as to what that looks like, but we know that it's important to engage the community. What do we mean by that? The businesses, the residents, other stakeholders, and we want to do that right out of the gate because we want to make sure we're tailoring this to the specific needs of Needham, obviously. The stakeholder communication is important. It has to start right at the beginning and throughout the project because there are going to be many stakeholders that are going to be asking the questions as this project advances forward. So again, we'll take the lead from the town as to what that looks like. But for example, we're doing the design for the reconstruction of Washington Street in Brookline. A lot of community engagement. I think we're up to DRC meeting number 9. But they have a very robust program with community engagement. And we see this no different in Needham. We know that the public's gonna wanna know what's happening with this. And the stakeholders are gonna wanna be part of that process, so. And we could talk about that a little further as we go, but I do want to turn it over to Dan because really the important part of this meeting tonight is to really talk about our understanding of the project and how we're gonna approach it.
So we're here tonight because the town of Needham would like to establish a quiet zone through downtown Needham between West Street and Oak Street. And in order to provide relief to the residents and the businesses of the continual blowing of the horns as trains approach the various crossings in town. And fortunately, the federal regulations allow for a public authority to establish a quiet zone once certain requirements are met. And we're happy to help the town in moving forward to the next steps. And certainly the town has taken some great big steps to start with. Next slide. The 2013 report includes obviously the 6 crossings downtown as well as the golf course. The 2015 study noted that the golf course crossing could not be included in the quiet zone, and the 2024 feasibility memo acknowledged the main line quiet zone, calculated quiet zone risk indices, and made recommendations for supplementary safety measures at each of those crossings. And we will work with the working group to review those reports and to either confirm or to amend any recommendations made therein, because certainly safety is paramount. And we, as a team, we want to make sure that things are safe for all users. Next slide. With that, I'll turn it over to Kurt, who will talk us through the approach.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm sure you've all read in our statement of interest, the outline that we put in for the project approach and where we're going to take over and, some of the important aspects of it. I think what I'd like to do is kind of focus on, the key elements of this approach that, where we can maybe pick up some time and do things more efficiently. And one of the things that was pointed out is we want to make sure that, we've got all of the preferred alternatives nailed down, that we know exactly going into the diagnostic meeting, these are the safety improvements we want to make at each crossing. So we're not trying to, come up with new ideas during the diagnostic. And then once we can conduct those diagnostics, we want to make that happen as soon as possible, as early in the process as we possibly can, because once we get the diagnostics done, then we can issue that notice of intent, which outlines what we're planning to do for the quiet zone and what improvements are going to be made. And there's a 60-day clock that goes with the notice of intent that various agencies can provide comments, including the railroad. And we'll want to have the ability to adjust and as needed with the comments that are received in the notice of intent. The other critical factor in trying to move this thing along is, getting the railroad cost estimates together. There's a lot of railroad signaling work that needs to be done as part of this project. And whenever you've got the signal work, there's some long material lead times that are involved in the construction phase. So the quicker we can get through the design elements and getting cost estimates together and getting the railroad under agreement, the better chance we've got of trying to accelerate the schedule. So regarding the schedule, and I know there's been some talk and consideration of, maybe is there some way we can phase the quiet zone and, do different segments of the quiet zone. But From what we've looked at so far, we're not really seeing any way we can break up the quiet zone to be able to do individual pieces that, we're probably gonna have to go after this thing, all as one 5 crossing quiet zone. So we want to make sure we can do that as efficiently as possible. One of the things we could do is do some of the signal design work for the railroad for Keolis. Within the last couple of weeks, we've talked to Keolis and about this specific project and, the possibility of us doing signal design to accelerate it. And from their perspective, they are totally good with that if it can help accelerate the project. They would have to do their own review and they would charge the city for their review of our design. So, but that was based on the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago with them. Next slide. So one of the other things that was discussed was this 2 quiet zone option, and this gets back to my phasing discussion earlier. That there was some talk maybe about doing West Street to May Street quiet zone and then Oak Street on its own. The problem with that is you get the train horn sounding for Great Plain Avenue on the approach from Oak Street or from May Street if you're going the other direction. So you actually have train horns sounding within the quiet zone that doesn't allow for the public to feel like they really have a quiet zone. Your public expectations typically aren't met in that case. A lot of question about why do we spend all this money and we've still got train horns, that kind of thing. And where we've run across it in other parts of the country, Tim has done a lot of work. City of San Antonio was one that was really, wanting to do something like this. The FRA typically discourages this type of quiet zone just because of all of those public expectations not being met and, not accomplishing what needs to be accomplished for the quiet zone. So there's a lot of challenges with that. It's not that it can't be done. It's just that there's a lot of challenges. It's highly discouraged. And then with the Great Plain Avenue, there's some additional challenges there that we wanted to point out. We've got, there's 2 station crossings that go from the parking lot over to the station itself, the loading platform, that those crossings will have to be addressed. And I didn't see where that was really talked about in any of the previous studies. So we want to make sure we get those addressed. We've got a traffic signal that has queuing that goes across Great Plain Avenue that we want to make sure that is addressed from a safety standpoint. It meets current designs for, traffic preemption. And then there's the added aspect about the possibility of putting in the new streetscape and how that would affect the current plans for a quiet zone. And do we need to coordinate that work together, or can we make some improvements now at Great Plain Avenue and then adjust them for the streetscape in the future? One of the things that Tim was looking at, Tim, do you want to talk about the channelization versus 4 quad at this location with the driveway? Yeah, you're on mute.
One of the things we look into a little more detail is, and you've got 4 quad gates as an option here, definitely. But there's that one driveway that comes in. If there's any way that we could eliminate that driveway to do an SSM there with medians, that might be a possibility. But there's also the possibility of looking at the calculations to see if we put channelization in or a median in on Great Plains and even left that driveway. If we didn't take credit, we make the safety improvements, which we need to do, but we don't take credit for that crossing. Does the quiet zone still meet? And if that's the case, it may be that there's an option of not having 4 quad gates there. Without looking at it in more detail, not sure, but that is a possibility that we'd like to look into as part of the project.
Right. Thanks, Tim. So those will be some things that we look at. Thanks, Dan.
Next slide. And we just wanted to acknowledge that the Needham Golf Club crossing is important to the town, and there is the town's desire to ultimately do something there to mitigate the sounding of the horns at that crossing, though it can't be part of this quiet zone. But we would like to continue to think outside the box and see if we can come up with ideas and mitigation for both safety as well as the horns, even if it's toward an ultimate, grade separation concept.
One of the aspects of that as well is, golfers who shank their ball, that would be me. And the ball ends up on the tracks, and now we have pedestrians up on the tracks and things like that. So we've had some discussions about that, not just grade separation or things like that, but also how do we prevent that kind of activity as well as part of this.
Next slide.
So tentative schedule, a very aggressive schedule that was provided, which we applaud you for that. And we will make every effort to meet those deadlines. However, we need to be mindful that when we're dealing with the FRA and even more so with the MBTA, they sort of march to their own schedule. However, we know the process and we know the people. And that actually helps us to maybe expedite things and move things along. We've already started discussions with the MBTA on this. Kurt, and you saw Rick Campbell, who was on the team as well, does a lot of work with the MBTA. And so we've had some initial discussions already with them about this. So again, aggressive schedule, but I think one of the other things was tell us how we can spend this money before the deadline's up. We will make every effort to do that. Obviously, we want to be efficient, effective, and economical as we're going through this process. So, we didn't have a tremendous amount of time for our presentation, but we want to try and hit as many of the high points as possible. And now certainly I'm here for at least 80 or 90 questions.
Harris will have fewer than that.
What other projects have you worked with specifically on the MBTA, and have you done other quiet zones as well?
I'll start with that one and then Kurt or Tim can pick up, but I've personally done 2 quiet zone studies, one in Braintree, one in Franklin, with FRA and BTA, Mass DOT, and the communities. And I've also worked with the 5 communities on the Greenbush line, Braintree, Weymouth, Cohasset, Situate, and Hingham. We did their 2021 affirmation as well as currently underway, just getting started on their 2024 reaffirmation of that quiet zone. So that's my personal experience. And then Kurt or Tim, if you have any projects you'd like to speak of.
Yeah, so we have done some crossing signal work for MBTA, a sub to a sub to its sub, but they ultimately approved our designs. So, but as far as quiet zone work, we've done quiet zone work all over the country, but we have not done any quiet zone work on MBTA.
Is there anything unusual about Massachusetts that would make us different from Indiana or Fort Worth or Columbia, South Carolina, or is it pretty much the same?
Tim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't see where there'd be any difference. I mean, the federal regulation, for the quiet zone is the same across the country, and it's just I don't see where there'd be any difference there.
But one thing I will say is Rick Campbell is well known at the MBTA. We had a project with Montauk Station in Beverly. We had Rick on the team, and generally when Rick comes in and speaks, the MBTA listens. And so we were fortunate to have him on the team in Beverly because it helped expedite that process through that project.
Here's the questions I have. So, have you grants for this type of project? So one of the things we have been sort of figuring out, is there any opportunities with the new Investment Recovery Act? Or anything else that might be available to the town, and would you be able to provide any assistance in trying to find grants?
I was just gonna say that occasionally the US DOT does provide CRISI grants and other things that can be used for grade crossings and things. Rich, you can share, and Kurt, do you have any other thoughts on the availability of funds?
So the grant programs right now, they're fast and furious and they're changing constantly, and as you know. And so, the grants that are out there that are available right now, obviously we'd be looking into those. Whatever it is, could be any type of grant, it could be shared streets, it could be anything. Because this project will not only be addressing the crossings and the work at the crossings, but as you heard a few minutes ago, how does this dovetail with some of the other projects in town, and how do we work all of those together? There is going to be some work that's gonna extend beyond just the crossing as part of these grade, as these grade evaluations.
So we have helped MTA, Metro North and Long Island Railroad get CRISI grants, CARSI grants from Federal Highway. We've been working with them on railroad crossing elimination grant for building grade separations, those kinds of things. So we have been involved in some of that type of grant work. As far as specifically for a quiet zone, Tim, have you been involved in any grants related to quiet zone construction?
No, the only ones that I've seen that were quiet zone related were initially like safety projects that were set up to
Right.
improve safety at the crossing, and then the city was going to come in behind those. A lot of the CRISI grants, a lot of the federal grants are specifically not for quiet zones or for safety projects. So I've seen cities designate safety projects first to get the money and go through the work, and then later on start working on a quiet zone so that they can get some improvements without throwing in the quiet zone so that CRISI grants go, no, you can't have that because it's not for a quiet zone.
It's essentially how you tell the story, right? When you go.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was gonna say, you asked the same question that I had down here, so, which was the one that I had left, and I appreciate your acknowledgement of, the Needham Golf Club, because we are in fact interested in continuing to pursue and understand what the options might be there. But I don't think I have any other questions. Justin, I forgot to ask you last time. Do you have any?
I had 3 questions written down, and actually all 3 were answered. So, I mean, for one thing that I know was mentioned in the feasibility was the constant timing indicators that would, lead to delayed gate closure at Great Plain. Can you speak to a little bit about that, or whether your experience of that is in your research, whether that's that would be an issue?
Yeah, we were talking about that this afternoon, Kurt. I'm gonna let you take it.
Okay, yeah, so, what we had talked about this afternoon internally after reviewing those documents was that that's really a function of the design for the constant warning time system. The issue is, when you're approaching a station and you have a station stop, the question is, are you better off leaving the gates down the entire time the train's in the station, or are you better off raising the gates and then, having the train engineer activate the gates and then wait a period of time for the gates to drop and come back. So, that's the big question, and that needs to be addressed from an operational standpoint during design. But there isn't any reason why constant warning time circuitry, you couldn't get them to operate the gates similarly how they're operating it right now. It's more for the reason why you have constant warning time circuitry is so that you have consistent warning on the approach to a grade crossing, regardless of the speed of the train. So, if you've got a 20-mile-an-hour train and then, a 40-mile-an-hour train on the approach, the 20-mile-an-hour train is going to take, the gates are going to be down twice as long. And so from that standpoint, the reason why the FRA wanted constant warning time as part of the quiet zone regs is the longer the gates are down, the more likely people are to drive around the gates. And so that's why they felt constant warning time was an important critical element and one of the requirements to have gates and constant warning and a power out indicator as part of the initial requirements for a quiet zone. But there isn't any reason you can't design with constant warning to have those gates operate the way they're operating right now, if that's the proper way to do it. Or once we look at it with MBTA and Keolis, we may come up with a better solution for operating in and out of that station.
Okay, and that's all. And also, I just noticed that Duncan is in the as listed as an attendee. I don't know if he had any questions or anything. But.
We didn't see him.
I don't think he can speak because he's in.
I guess we wouldn't see it, right? That's actually really interesting news. So, thank you for that.
Yes.
We look forward to that being explored.
Certainly, leaving the gates down while passengers board and alight seems contrary to the intent of the constant morning time. So
Yeah.
we hope to find an alternate solution to that.
It is happening at me.
Yeah. So. For better or for worse.
Duncan, we didn't see you. We apologize. Do you have any questions for Ty and Bond?
You're on.
You're on mute.
You're shaking his head.
I'm shaking your head, okay.
No, I've been listening for a while, no questions.
Thank you.
There you go.
Duncan's our railroad guy.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, many years.
The team has no more questions. If you just want to give any kind of a summary statement, I'm happy to listen.
Yeah,
but thank you.
we've assembled a great team. These folks are really well experienced. We're very local to you in our Westwood office, but beyond that, what you know about Ty and Bond, we've got a lot of the other services. You know, if there's complete streets components of it, if there's streetscaping components of it, all that's part of what we do internally at Ty and Bond. So whatever this looks like at the end of the day, you know, that's all part of our team. And those services we have in from a traffic standpoint. Greg wasn't here. But all those aspects of it, as this project fills out and gets developed, there'll be other components of it, and we've got the resources to be able to provide those locally.
Do you have incredibly creative people who could think of a way to have a quiet zone but keep the golf course running?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just curious. Did you bid when we were looking for a consultant earlier for the first
No.
class of work? No.
Nobody.
No, but we were involved with providing some connectivity on the rail trail to the depot.
Okay.
By the way, Jim,
It's right, it's in the.
it's in the pipeline.
World Tech did that, right?
Yeah,
World Tech.
Yeah. I think we actually, the night we presented to the select board, someone was in talking about how a dog bit somebody and they were.
Oh, gosh.
I sat through that. It was quite entertaining.
You and many other people found that one entertaining.
They're your dogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at any rate, so you didn't bid before, but now it's a project that fits maybe within the scope of the portfolio of work that you've had undergoing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, with having Banesh on the team as well, just really rounds out every component of what's necessary to get a project through the process. And it is a process. Like I said, it took us 10 years in Beverly. It doesn't have to take that long. It really doesn't, but it was.
Why do you think it took so long in Beverly?
Just trying to get through all of the permitting process and back and forth, and then the constituent information. And, you know, you're dealing with the FRA and you're dealing with the MBTA, and then the MBTA has their own, you know, sort of consultant that they can go through stuff. And, you know, sometimes there's 40 people at the meeting, except the one person that you need to get a decision from, you know, that kind of stuff. So it was a long process. And matter of fact, Lars, I actually had spoken to him and suggested he speak with Mayor Cahill in Beverly at one point, just because they.
We tried, we didn't actually get a call back from him, but we did try.
Oh, you were on the email as well. Okay,
Okay.
yes. He didn't call you back? I'm gonna talk to him.
Sadly, no, we tried more than once, so.
I did speak with Mike Collins today. He's the Commissioner of Public Works. I don't know, you know, Mike, he just came back from North Carolina. He was down there for 28 days doing emergency management stuff, but I did speak with him today and he said, like I said, it doesn't need to take that long. But again, if you know the process and you know the people, but we weren't the consultants obviously on that, but sometimes you gotta push a little bit. You're gonna say, hey, look, you know, we need to set up this meeting. We need to have regular meetings. We can't go weeks on end without talking to the folks from the MBTA. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
You're gonna be constantly communicating with them. And it's a challenge sometimes, but you know what, like a bad penny, it just keep coming back.
The other thing that's gonna be critical, I think Kurt talked about it, is getting your goals and the thought of how this is gonna go up front. When you start to do the notice of intent, when you start to collect that information, present it, there's not a lot of chance to turn back. And when you turn back is when you kill your schedule.
Yeah.
So you've gotta get
that's
those
right.
folks, get it ferreted out, find out what folks are will do and won't do. And these guys have done it enough, well, they'll know what can be done and what can't be done. So when you're having those public meetings, you're gonna have folks that are gonna say, we need to do this, this, and this. And we've got to be able to, and those meetings can be sometimes tough when you say, no, this is where we can go, this is where we can't go. And that can be some tough love at times, but it's important to the process. Because otherwise, you move yourself down the line and you look up and say, oh, well, we didn't discuss that, we need to discuss it up front.
And that's a great point, Adam, because even on TIP projects, there's certain things that you can do. You have a lot of latitude with, and then there's other things that you just have to do. Because that's the regulation to do it. And then there's always that stuff in the middle that you can negotiate a little bit with.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the key component, because Adam's absolutely right. I mean, you get out and think you're on the 5-yard line and all of a sudden you get a 15-yard penalty and you're going over stuff again and again and again. That's what will kill the schedule.
Yeah.
So.
And Rich mentioned the permitting as a contributor to the 10-year process, but I sat down with one of our wetland scientists and looked at the project, and at least in our brief dashboard survey, it looks like you'd be able to avoid all that environmental.
Yes,
trouble.
yeah, I think so.
Thankfully.
That's a wonderful thing.
Thankfully.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Very nice
thank
to
you.
meet all of you.
Appreciate all the time.
And I'm trying to talk to the mayor.
That's great, we'd still be happy to talk to him.
Yeah,
so.
well, you know what? I'm gonna tell them that you're starting the process. So I'll make sure to call you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
Thanks, Tim.
Good night,
Thanks,
guys.
Craig. Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, yeah.
Just grab my, thumb drive.
Oh.
Yeah, for sure. Let me eject it safely for you.
Now, whenever I hear about thumb drive, I just think of Cecilia and Dave when the Wi-Fi was out bringing the thumb drives.
The phones were out too. Everything was out.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
How to do it the correct way. So-
Miles, I thank you on that, thank you.
All right, we have Justin still, yeah.
Put down the.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just mobile right now because I had to drop my daughter off at a after school activity. So she's listening too. This is riveting.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. I usually start by saying, let's talk positives of both people first, right? We want to talk positives for GPI? What do we have?
I think they have familiarity with this particular project since they did the initial diagnostic. It does look like they're partnering with a different firm though than the first time, so it's a different.
Jacobs is a
expert.
huge Boston
Yeah.
firm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a positive, and they seem to, people at Jacobs seem to have a lot of experience as a team with.
Okay, anything else? All right, positives for time bond.
I think an interesting one is just a fresh pair of eyes on the feasibility. You know, they had some thoughts about whether it should go the way it was recommended. They seem to have different insights about Great Plain and the gate crossing, so that's just helpful. They mentioned community engagement a lot. I didn't hear that. They mentioned the pedestrian crossings. I didn't know that there was anything that had to be done with those. So that was interesting, new information.
That's a state requirement, I believe. Or no, we
Yeah.
don't know if it's a requirement, but that came out of the lawsuit that however that's pending. Because it was actually a DPU, Department of Public Utilities, requirement in Massachusetts, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting
had
that it came
already
up here.
talked about it. Those
Right,
are the
and
things
then
that
the
are-
constant warning time.
Yeah.
Potential change.
Yeah. They both said that one contractor had to own the whole thing, so I think.
Yeah, they both said no divided quiet zone, which I thought was useful.
Yeah. All right. Okay, negatives? Anything you're worried about?
Well, the lack of diversity.
I actually had it on my list to say, should I even ask that question? Because
Well,
it looks
I
kind
know a
of.
race equity statement, but I'm just saying that's what this
Yeah.
world is right now. Because it's not a
That's
differentiating
what we've seen
factor.
throughout this process or this project, yeah.
So on GPI, I would just say we have a lot of projects with them right now. It's not just unique to GPI, but, a lot of the firms are overloaded when it comes to projects and just making sure that this becomes a priority and it gets delivered on time. Knowing that we have some deadlines that are pretty aggressive to begin with. So I think that would be, a concern.
I think it's just an expectation setting. That we may not make May. We just need to know that and, you know, if we could be on track for the truck fair, great, or for October.
Duncan, Justin, anything you want to add it?
No, I mean, I thought they both were, you know, they both seemed to demonstrate experience. They both, you know, I definitely appreciate number two, with the constant timing, options to be able to not have that delayed arm down to see the possibility. I like that they also mentioned the quiet zone. The quiet zone, the golf course, and looking into possible options. I think that was a plus. Just from kind of a warm fuzzy, I got that on, you know, better feeling on number two, but that's just, you know, that's not necessarily qualification or something to put against them, but that's kind of the comments that I have.
I mean, if you look at Fort Worth and there are 200 grade crossings, that's just a size and scope.
Yeah, that was.
We've done a lot.
I think actually the last statement that they made about being really clear on what our goals are, I think sometimes we need consultants to help us refine what we're actually looking for to get things as fast as we want, because we don't always know how to channel that process or even winnow down those. So I felt like they gave more guidance on how to navigate the process, not that GPI wouldn't, but in their presentation, that was more of a focus.
I did worry that GPI relied on familiarity too much. And so I'm sitting here trying to balance, are they just relying on that, or would they actually deliver these things that seem to be quite clear from Time Bond that we're going to be part of their process, that are very important to us to be successful.
Yeah, it's your opportunity when you come to highlight it.
All right, so do we have a decision? My gut says it's Time Bond.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to be clear, we're selecting one of our pre-qualified consultants and that would be our contracting authority, but if the working group agrees, then we'll go in that direction.
Duncan and Justin?
Yeah, I think agree for number two. Come on.
I think Duncan had been trying to speak earlier, but was having maybe
Duncan,
some
have
connectivity issues.
Can we hear you maybe?
He was off, he was not muted, but his mouth was moving prior. I'm gonna mute him and then ask him to unmute again and see what happens.
I'm wondering if it's maybe if he's having connection issues, I would turn my video off to try to get the audio to go through.
It's also not responding to us. I think there's just broad connectivity
He
issues.
was shaking his head no, though, when we.
I'm
The sign language.
gonna let Duncan in, who's on as an attendee again.
Okay.
So there might be two Duncans coming in.
Then we're gonna have review.
That's how you get quorum right there.
I'm thinking that you can hear me now.
Yes, we can, hooray.
I'm okay with number two. Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with the firm some time ago. I have a pretty good feeling about them, and yeah.
Okay,
great. Thank you, Duncan.
All right, so I think we have a decision. We're good.
We'll work on the scope with them.
Work on the scope and we'll get rolling. And our goal is to get to town meeting in the spring. That remains the goal. But I agree, we all heard pretty clearly, one project is the best way to go forward. So we're gonna have to understand all the parameters and constraints so we can make the best decisions up front.
Why don't we hold off setting the next meeting date? Can you mute? Until we know we have them under contract and then figure that out. And then.
All right, so once we know we have them under contract, then we'll figure out what the next meeting date
And what we wanna
is
do
for
at that.
everybody and what our goals are.
We'll meet with them and then bring them back in.
Is that good?
Okay.
Blood works
Yep, sounds good.
or something, yes? Okay. then, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Second?
Duncan?
Yeah.
You want to say yes? Justin?
It's probably dropping us down.
Yeah,
Yep, sorry, I was,
sorry, I have to roll call vote because you're remote.
yes.
Aye, okay, Kate?
Yes.
And the chair says yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.